We reached 2,000 subs! Woohoo! Yeah, it was just an excuse to wear the sombrero again, to be honest. Anyway, I realised that there aren't many YouTube reviews of the Robots game. And you know what they say? See a need, fill a need. Released in 2005, Blue Sky's Robots tells the story of Rodney Copperbottom, a young inventor who tracks down his idol, Bigweld.
You can shine no matter what you're made of.
Who runs a company supplying spare parts to fellow robots.
What?
Rodney's horrified to find that the evil Ratchet has taken over and started cheating these robots into purchasing expensive upgrades.
Why be you when you can be new?
And it's up to Rodney to save the day.
Who wants to get fixed?
It's an entertaining and witty movie, although it's far from perfect. Put it this way, there are parts of the movie I do like,
and parts I don't like.
And although the movie starts off great, it kinda boils down to a very formulaic movie with some extremely ill-fitting pop culture references. And of course, the usual cliché crude humour.
Yeah, baby! Let it rip!
Anyway, we're not here to moan about the movie, we're here to moan about the video game. Although admittedly on the surface it looks pretty impressive. The question is, does this game kick butt or is it pure scrap?
If you're going to Robot City, you'll need to fix your Wonderbot.
The game begins in Rivet Town, where we control Rodney Copperbottom as a young, boybot, as we need to find the pieces to the blueprint for our Wonderbot. Immediately as this started, I was instantly reminded of Ratchet and Clank. Mostly because you collect pieces of scrap, reminiscent of the collectible bolts in that game. Although the retrieval of these things is nowhere near as smooth. In Ratchet and Clank, these bolts draw toward you when you're nearby. But in this game, they seem to take a while to react to your presence, and I sometimes found myself pacing back and forth until they responded. Rodney can double jump, zipline, and also slide underneath gaps to access more areas. Once we have all the pieces, Daddy Dishwasher assembles our Wonderbot.
I have to go to work now, but come meet me at the diner once you've put on your grow-ups.
And within moments, we get to change into adult Rodney. Huh, was there really much point in having a level with Rodney as a boy? He grew almost as quickly as Aladar. Almost. That growth spurt takes some beating. We then need to join our dad at the diner where he works. Here he hands you the scrap launcher, which becomes your most prominent weapon. You can use it to fire any pieces of scrap that you've picked up. And you can also use it through a first-person view. If you run out of scrap, you can simply attack with your wrench. I also find it kind of amusing that Rodney destroys fellow robots throughout the game.
Uh-oh. Sorry about that.
Which is quite the opposite of his behaviour in the movie.
Crush, kill, destroy.
Hey, aren't you supposed to be helping robot kind? I think he's got a screw loose. Anyway, we then need to buy a ticket to the extremely imaginatively named Robot City.
There's just one last thing. The train fare.
But we first need 10 pieces of gold scrap, so we have to steal some from the town hall. That's a little morally questionable, but okay. You know, I'm starting to think I'm the bad guy of this game. Oh, we got strapped for cash! Their train fares must be as bad as ours.
Looks like you got the scrap kicked out of you.
Oh yeah, and you'll notice that Rodney here is very obviously not voiced by Ewan McGregor as in the movie. Instead, believe it or not, he's actually voiced by Jess Harnell. Now, I've nothing against Harnell as a voice actor. I actually think he's great. But it's really odd that they chose a voice that's so strikingly different to how it sounded in the movie. Then again, I suppose the alternative was a bad impersonation. And we know what that's like, don't we, Mrs. Mulch?
Nothing like a bit of wild mushroom in me pie.
Oh, you saucy minx! There are several switches Rodney can activate in several ways. To activate buttons or levers, you simply have to tap the triangle button. There are also pressure pad switches that require you to perform a double jump and ground stomp to activate them. And finally, there are these tinker switches, which require you to use your wrench by holding the triangle button. Oh, and one thing I noticed about this game is the slow platforms. Now, this complaint is nothing new. I get impatient with a lot of games when it comes to things like platforming and timing puzzles, but holy mother of God, are they slow! You need the patience of a saint to play this game. Really, how slowly do they think I move? To make matters worse, Rodney's jump is kind of weird and floaty. It's not awful, but I personally don't think it suits him physically. It feels like he lands too softly, and despite being told that he can cling to ledges, there are a few times throughout the game when he simply refuses to.
Yeah, I think my robot's malfunctioning. Any chance of an upgrade?
Once we have our gold scrap, we can head to the station and onwards to the city.
Enjoy your trip!
And by the way, I love the fact that you're able to talk to pretty much everybody in the game.
I'm so sorry. I have no time for such idle chit-chat.
It's just a shame nobody has anything interesting to say.
I wish I had something interesting to say.
You see?
While at the station, we meet a fellow inventor, who informs us that he can make us a remote to control Wonderbots if we just find him some blueprints. Yes, again, I have to say these levels are well made, and Rodney does control well for the most part. The drawback is that these levels are extremely repetitive. Most of the levels follow the same basic template, and the entire game feels like one big item hunt.
In your faceplate!
That's not to say it's especially bad, it's just not very interesting, especially when you're left with just 1 or 2 items to find. There's extensive backtracking and it can get tiresome.
Good work, you've found all the pieces.
Once we have all the blueprint pieces, we can temporarily take control of Wonderbot. All you have to do is stand on one of these green pads and press triangle, and then you can guide Wonderbot to one of these special switches to activate certain objects. As we venture into the city, we encounter Jack Hammer.
Not that jackhammer!
Hey there.
Oh, that's the one!
And is it me, or does he bear an uncanny resemblance to the inventor we spoke to a few minutes ago?
What, are they related to something?
Looks like you're in need of an upgrade or two.
He promises us a Magna Beam upgrade, as long as we find the blueprints. But in order to find them all, we need to take the transit system to Midtown, and for that we need 10 gold scrap. 5 gold scrap can be found dotted around the station, but for the remaining 5, we need to speak to this guy.
Hello there!
That!
Who's admiring the Bigweld clock.
Why, I would be surprised if it wasn't the most accurate timepiece in the city.
After Wonderbot accidentally destroys it, we need to retrieve the missing cogs. And if you return all the cogs to this guy, he gives you the remaining 5 gold scrap. For some reason.
That's unusually generous of you, buddy.
I actually found this clock repair part of the game kind of weird. I mean, running around looking for cogs isn't exactly drastically different to running around looking for gold scrap. Really, what was the point in this?
Please drive carefully and keep all hands and arms inside the pod at all times.
Anyway, we can then head over to Midtown using the transit system.
Hey, watch it, buddy!
This controls very simply. With the R1 button, you can perform a speed boost. But all the speed boosts just make it harder to avoid all the other pods. They just get in the way all the time.
Oh, pod off!
Once we get to Midtown, we meet the Rusties, including Big Guy Lug and Aunt Fanny.
See a need, fill a need.
Named such because of her enormous fanny.
Which, if you live in the UK like me, has a very different meaning.
Hey, little fella.
Lug and Piper have some challenges for you in exchange for blueprints.
You don't stand a chance.
Okay, so this leads me to a small issue I have. Firstly, this game contains a few races and timed item collection tasks. And it's not always obvious where all the items are, so there's a good chance you'll lose on your first attempt. Now, this in itself is not the problem. I personally like a game that doesn't spoon-feed you all the answers, but when you inevitably fail one of these missions, the game then takes a while to load the area where you first accepted the mission, where you're then asked if you want to retry.
Would you like to try again?
I mean, of course you do, because otherwise you can't progress. But selecting yes will then take us to another loading screen to start the mission over again. Look out! The loading screens aren't particularly lengthy, but they are intrusive and it kills the adrenaline. There is literally no point in taking me all the way back to some other location just to decide to restart the mission. It's just tedious.
Excellent. Here's the Magna Beam.
With all the blueprints, Jack Hammer hands us the Magna Beam, which can be used to draw enemies towards you and destroy them. And also move around certain objects to help you climb to out-of-reach locations. It can also be used to retrieve out-of-reach pieces of scrap. Jack Hammer then points you in the direction of Bigweld's factory, and we then get to view a movie clip of the transit system, which is surprisingly interesting in that it's technically not a movie clip. In this scene in the movie, Rodney is accompanied by Fender.
Oh yeah, baby!
Oh, not Bender, Fender!
In the game, however, this scene depicts Rodney alongside an elderly lady robot, which makes me wonder whether this was how the scene was originally planned to appear earlier in the film's production.
I'd like to see Mr. Bigweld. I'm an inventor.
Sorry, nobody gets in. Company rules.
Anyway, as soon as we arrive at the factory, Tim won't allow us in unless we retrieve all of the pieces of his toolkit.
There's not really much variety in this game, is there?
Throughout the game, you also find these vending machines. Activating these not only lets you save your game, but they also provide you with a number of items you can purchase to upgrade your weapons and help you on your adventure. Oh, and there are also bonus features available for purchase that you can view in the main menu. Which is great and all, but a lot of these are extremely overpriced. For example, it costs 800 pieces of scrap for a slideshow that consists of just 4 screenshots of the movie.
Life well spent.
Some of these extra features are cool though, including interviews with the cast and crew, although they spent a bewildering amount of time on this kid who voiced Boybot Rodney.
If I could create my own robot, he'd be able to do everything. He'd be a part-time camera, he'd have all the jewelry in the world.
I mean, yes, he's adorable, but Jesus Christ, he's in the game for all of 5 minutes, and he does little else but quietly grunt. Did we really need a 2.5-minute interview about his involvement? The same goes for Jennifer Coolidge here, who plays Aunt Fanny. She's barely in this game.
I just kept thinking, you know, what would a giant butt sound like if it could speak?
That is quite the question, and one I'm sure I don't want to know the answer to. Wait, do I? No.
Also, one thing I found out from this is that Coolidge herself is responsible for the Aunt Fanny fart scene in the movie.
And they added it in, and I'm really happy about it. They added Aunt Fan's fart into the film, and I'm really excited about it.
Thanks for your input. It really elevated the movie. Do you know, I never thought I'd say the words fanny fart in a review, but here we are!
Anyway, with all of Tim's tools, he still will not let us in. But with Tim out of the way, we can speak to this guy.
You found Tim's toolkit. That'll keep him busy for a while.
And is it me, or does he look oddly familiar?
Have we met?
Did they have a limited number of robot models or something? I feel like I'm meeting Jackhammer's entire family. Anyway, this guy tells us to find the blueprints for the Robo-Glide.
Climb the factory walls, find all the pieces. I'll meet you up there soon to show you how to get in.
Now and again you'll come across these battery recharge pads, which can be used to recharge your weapons. The amount of power you have remaining in your gadgets is indicated by a meter in the top left. Although whenever I was low on power, there often seemed to be one of these pads nearby, so I didn't really see much point.
Excellent. Here's your prize. The Robo-Glide.
With the Robo-Glide, we can now use Wonderbot to glide to distant platforms by holding the triangle button. Speaking of Wonderbots, I neglected to mention that throughout the game you find trick chips. These are either found hidden around the levels, given as rewards for completing miscellaneous side quests, or they can be purchased from the various vending machines. There are 16 in total, and finding them lets you see Wonderbot perform tricks on demand. They're nothing all that special, but kinda cute, I guess. Although I am a little disappointed that there's no reward for having found all of them, besides the tricks themselves, of course. Anyway, as soon as we make our way inside Bigweld's factory, we need to take out some robot executives, and it's kinda like whack-a-mole. It's pretty chaotic here and not too fun either. It's certainly not the best whack-a-mole game I've played.
Gloria, show 'em how it's done!
Immediately afterwards, we're told that the evil Ratchet has taken over Bigweld's factory. He promptly throws Rodney out of his office, and we bump into Lug and Fender. Some of Fender anyway.
How about helping Fender find his head?
This mission sees her having to navigate the out mode zone to find Fender's head. While here, we find another inventor, who looks completely different to all the others we've encountered so far.
Completely different.
I've got a treat for you. See this blueprint? It's for an invention of mine called the Electro-Shot.
He promises to give us the Electro-Shot weapon as long as we collect...
Go on, finish your sentence, you know this!
Scraptacular!
I'm sorry, Scraptacular? Is that supposed to be a good thing? It sounds like Craptacular, as in...
It's craptacular.
And as a pun, it's almost as bad as Ice-tacular.
Spectacular! No, ice-tacular!
Do these writers know how puns actually work? You might say the puns themselves are Scraptacular.
The Rodinator.
This level can get a little confusing, and I briefly got a little lost around here as it doesn't always seem clear how to progress. This sounds like a criticism, but it's actually more of a compliment. It's actually pretty refreshing to play something that's a little more of a challenge, and I found myself going round in circles numerous times, trying to figure out where I was supposed to be.
Here you go!
With the electro shots, we can not only electrocute enemies, but we can also activate several switches to progress further. Eventually, we find the head. Sadly, since spare parts are no longer available, Fender cannot be fixed. But Jack Hammer knows a way Rodney can retrieve spare parts.
You'll need my transport pod, but you'll have to prove your driving skills before I'll let you borrow it, hotshot.
So this next level sees her having to race around in a pod and collect, yes, blueprints. This time for Jack Hammer's Magna Grip.
I feel like I'm spending far more time looking for the blueprints to these gadgets than actually using them.
The Magna Grip allows you to stick to metal ceilings and move Rodney along them. But before we get a chance to use it, we head to an abandoned sewer to retrieve a whopping 50 spare parts. And yes, this can take a while. Initially, this feels like a nice change of pace, simply because you're rolling around rather than walking. But it's not long before you realize this is merely yet another find all the items mission.
You know, like pretty much every other level so far.
Can we please have one level that doesn't require me to collect things? It would really make my day!
Rodney, you're back.
Once we return to Jack Hammer, he reveals he has another invention that will help us. The problem is that a sewer maintenance bot has hijacked the shipment, meaning we need to head back to the sewer for this boss fight that just came right the hell out of nowhere. The big bot will fire what appears to be toxic waste at you. You simply have to fire the same at him when he's finished activating all his cannons. With the big bot destroyed, we get to use scramblers, which can be used to temporarily stun robots and disable hazardous machinery.
I'm sure you'll get good use out of them.
Yeah, you'd think so, but not really. I'm not kidding, aside from the very rare occasion I needed to use scramblers to progress, I almost never use these things. And by the way, up until this point, I was genuinely convinced that this game would keep making excuses for Fender not to speak, simply because they obviously couldn't get Robin Williams to voice him. I mean, he's been headless for over half the game by this point, but oh my god, he actually talks!
I'm so poor I can't even buy a ticket on a train of thought.
Yeah, it really wasn't worth the wait. Still, it's nice to know that our efforts have gone to help at least one robot, in spite of all the hundreds we've brutally murdered.
Die, robot thingy, die!
Anyway, Jack Hammer points us to Bigweld's mansion to seek out Bigweld himself.
Bigweld? Is that you?
We're accompanied by our new friend Cappy, who's decided to help us, although she doesn't seem to be trying very hard.
You look like a nice guy, but I really can't talk.
How bloody rude! You're supposed to be helping me!
Okay, so this level is basically one big puzzle to locate Bigweld. We need to find a way to power this machine to reveal a button combination to reach the upper level of the mansion. For experienced players, it's nothing difficult, but I appreciate a game that's not overly patronizing to kids and providing hints every few seconds.
I need a cannon plant.
Yes, Flick, I know you need a cannon plant. You already told me.
What? It can't be true!
Bigweld then agrees to help us confront Ratchet, and the next level sees our having to ride Bigweld as we escape Ratchet, because he's trying to kill us.
I take it the negotiations didn't go well then.
They see me rolling, they hate it.
This level is incredibly simple, although controlling Bigweld feels a little awkward. You need to time your jumps just right, and it's hard to avoid everything because he's so big and clunky. Immediately afterwards, we need to rescue Bigweld from the chop shop. Seriously, why did people bother trying to help me? They either don't do anything or just wind up getting in the way.
Can everyone just leave me alone? This is precisely why I despise group work.
Hey kid, you know I can't let you in here. Orders, you know.
There comes a point when you're told you need 10 gold scrap to get through this door, and I'll admit it took me longer than it should have done to figure out where to find them. I came so close to using a walkthrough, but then I just happened upon the right path out of pure chance. Once again, I have to give credit for the level design. There's no denying this is at least a moderately difficult game for its target audience. Finding all the gold scrap isn't too difficult once you're on the right track, but returning to the door once you've found them is a nightmare. You need to use the updrafts around the room and land precisely on the turbines, and you need to keep doing this repeatedly until you reach the top of the room. You would not believe how frustrating this is. Miss the turbine and you'll be instantly melted down and have to start the climb all over again.
I think I'm having a meltdown of my own.
You stupid little plonker, Rodney.
The final level is a first-person shooter level, as we finally come face-to-face with Ratchet.
Hey, you're that robot guy, right?
Not that Ratchet!
We're gonna take you apart, blue boy.
That's the one!
And I'll tell you this much, I am horrendous at first-person shooters, so I did not enjoy this. You need to fire scrap at the oncoming robots, and take out the sweepers as their lights switch on. I love that that there's been absolutely no mention of these sweepers throughout the game, so unless you've seen the movie, this is deeply confusing. Anyway, Ratchet finally shows up and starts bombing us too.
What orders came? Coming up!
I found this level pretty frustrating at first, but once it was over, I was kinda disappointed there was no more. It felt a little anticlimactic.
Woohoo! You are never gonna shine, no matter what you're made of.
This game is pretty good, in the sense that it controls rather well, and the level design is admirable. Graphically, I think it's fairly impressive too, but it gets bogged down by its dull and repetitive tasks. Almost every level requires you to find blueprints or scrap, and unsurprisingly, it gets tedious. It's far from a bad game, but it's not the most interesting either. You spend more time collecting the blueprints for the gadgets than actually using the things. Ultimately, it boils down to a decent experience. Nothing more, nothing less.
It's not in my top movie games ever, but it's hardly what I'd call scraptacular.
Scraptacular.
Domo arigato, Mr. Roboto. Domo. Domo.
Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed, and a massive thanks for 2,000 subs. I'm gonna be honest though, this game was a bit of a chore to get through. As I said in the review, it's not a bad game, but it's not a great game either. It's just kind of good, you know? It felt very middle of the road, and these are the worst kinds of games to cover because they're so repetitive and formulaic. It was an awkward one to give a rating for because it's clearly well made, but it's also kind of boring at the same time. Maybe I was a little too generous? I don't know. Either way, I'm kinda glad that one's over with. There were some mildly amusing scenes I wound up cutting though. I liked some of these, but including them just made the video feel overly long and slow. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching everyone. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.